All right, we are pulling in quite a few individuals right now to get started. We're about to kick this process off. Thank you all for waiting in the waiting room as we get in. We may still have a couple of people that join in over time and get started from there, but I think we're going to be able to get through most of this in about an hour, but we will have the opportunity for y'all to answer questions. I'll do a short introduction of myself, let y'all know a little bit about what we're doing today. So my name is Joshua Tooley. I'm the Director of IT Support. My team's the one that's kind of helping individuals that are working through the process with their current players and helping to make sure that we're posing out training to individuals about what's going on. I'm going to cover a couple of little core pieces today, and then we're going to turn this over to an individual from Korbyt. His name is Ed. He's done some great training for us already, and he's going to work through some training for us. Couple of things that I'll kind of let everyone know. If you do have questions, please pose them to chat. That's going to be an important way for us to kind of track some of the questions that you have. I have some team members today that are going to try to go through and provide you with some answers. We may not have answers to everything, and we may follow back up with you. The training that we're focusing on is going to be really on the basic components of Korbyt. We've already done some advanced training with some of our more advanced players and others, and we've already worked through training for them. In this case, this was really more focusing on the larger audience and our player managers that are out there. So I'm going to go ahead and kick it off and get us started, and then we'll transition it over to Ed in just a little bit. So let's talk a little bit about our overview today. We're going to cover a little bit about why this took much longer than expected. Sorry that this has not gone quite the way that we had planned it. We were hopeful to have this done in the summer transition, but that didn't quite happen with some of our EMS integrations and others to try to get all the players online. But we feel like we're at a good spot now, and it's ready to begin some training for those of you that are really itching to get into your players. I'm going to spend a little bit of time talking about some things to know and really just give you a little bit more of an idea of why we made the change from 4Winds, also known as Populo, over to Korbyt. We're going to do a little bit of browsing a particular web page that we have that's going to turn into a tremendous amount of resource for all of you. It's going to have all of our training. I will make sure to post this training out on the website later this week because we are recording the session, which is why I'm trying to get most individuals to pose their questions to chat so we can work through those. Then I'm going to turn it over to Ed, who's going to do a basic system overview. He's going to talk about players, clever playlists, which are the biggest part of what we already have in the system. And then last but not least, we'll try to answer some questions for you, but I'll also give you an avenue in which to submit requests when you do have any particular issues with your players. We should have most players converted and moved over at this point. There are still a couple that are giving us some trouble that we're working through. I've got several team members that are assigned to working with all the different players because we've got about 150 or 160 active players that are out there now, and we're working through trying to bring up a couple of others that are out there, but our embedded support team members are going to be working with some of you to try to make sure these players are on and verify that things are going well if there's a particular issue. So I do want to start off with an apology. We had promised throughout this whole process that we were going to try to finish training up this summer. That was something we expected to do in June and July, and here it is in August, the second week of school before we could get to that point. A lot of that was just kind of the onboarding process and us internally getting all of these things taken care of. It really, there's a lot of work that goes into moving all these players over and making sure you have the appropriate access. But and I'll talk just a little bit about what that particular piece means. Some things to know, as I mentioned, and as other individuals that are just joining in might or might not have heard, we moved away from 4Winds at the end of the summer, also known as Populo, over to Korbyt. And when we moved individuals over, we moved your existing signage. So if you had something active or playing on your sign at that time, we converted those over into Korbyt and moved over your same user access. So if you had one person who had access to a sign in 4Winds, they have access to that same sign in Korbyt. We've done some updates as people have left and moved around and other things have kind of come into play. But the one thing to note is we moved over your existing signage. If you didn't have content running, we didn't move that over. And right now your sign is probably playing the TCU 150th logo. So that's one thing thing to note that now when something's not playing, instead of it going black when what we used to have with 4Winds, we now have a standardized background image that's going to come up in times or cases where you don't have content scheduled. We did not change out your equipment. All your TVs stayed the same. All your computers stayed the same. We simply just removed 4Winds from your device, deployed Korbyt, and set up your player to move that existing with that existing content that you were running from this summer over. 4Winds is no longer available. I've had 1 or 2 questions from people going, hey, can I log into 4Winds? I'd like to grab some of this content or work through some of these other pieces. There's a lot of content that we have out on our signage share, which is where most of that content was stored if we need to access it, but we no longer have access to 4Winds. Korbyt has been able to take on all the different tool sets, even our advanced players that are out there doing some things with EMS or some of our interactive touch kiosks that we have over in admissions. Those are all already handled and moved into Korbyt along with your other players. So we no longer have access to 4Winds. And if you do have trouble, one of the things I will say, we don't mind you having questions or posing them to chat, which is where I definitely want you to post those questions. But if you're having trouble with your sign not coming on, or you don't have access to something, or you want to add an individual to your request, make sure to submit a request through IT's ticketing system, and we will assign it over to one of our embedded support members that's working to try to make sure that your players are online and that things are good to go. So do not hesitate to put in a request. We'll get that to the right place and we'll work through that process. We've been holding on to some of those requests for a little bit until we could complete this training and get you through some of the basics that are out there. I will tell you, I'm very excited about Korbyt. It's been a great tool for us to move into. There's definitely some huge benefits to that. And I'm going to cover a couple of things off of our website, and then I'm going to go into a little bit about some benefits of some things that we've got from a Korbyt perspective, and then I'll turn it over to Ed. So for any of you that want to access the Korbyt tool, you can visit our website at korbyt.tcu.edu. Simple website. It's got a login button as well as access to a ton of online content, training videos, resources that Korbyt has on their website that we link off to, and the opportunity to request help. So I'm going to take just a second to browse that site for you. If you visit korbyt.tcu.edu, again, you've got your login button here. So this is how you are going to get in to the Korbyt system. We're also posting the link to chat. Thank you very much, Charles. You've got an overview of the Korbyt system to kind of give you an idea of how their system works, a little bit of information about our rollout to campus, even though it did take a little bit longer than we indicated here, who gets access to the tool and how you access additional resources, all those training resources I was talking about that they have on Korbyt's site, as well as all of this training that we've already done with Ed over the course of the summer. Most of you, and I will replace this clever playlist training with the training that we do today, most of you will only ever need to review this video. But if you are running an advanced player or interested in moving into doing more functionality in the product, the publishing and content management part 1 and 2 are great videos, as well as just kind of doing a basic overview of the product at a more in-depth situation. So we've got a ton of online content for those of you who want to learn to explore more with your players, and you're going to have a lot more access to the tool to be able to make modifications to your existing players. So before you start jumping down that journey, it will be extremely important for you to make sure that you've watched and reviewed some of the content that's here. I think that will be extremely helpful as you start to run through the process and learn more about what resources are available to you as you kind of explore the tool itself. So we'll go back into talking a little bit, or I'll transition this over to Ed, but a couple of things I want to discuss before we do that is some of the reasons and why we made that move to Korbyt from 4Winds is that in terms of 4Winds, we had to restrict your access down to just a handful of individuals who had access to the system. We used to be able to add more individuals and users who could manage their signs, and that was pared down greatly when we did our last upgrade to 4Winds. And moving to Korbyt opens up a ton of flexibility for us because we no longer have to worry about how many individuals we can add. It's much more based on the players. So if you have other teammates or other people that you want to be able to have access to this tool to help you manage your digital signs, that's going to definitely be an opportunity for you. And as you will see when we transition this over to Ed as well, He's going to show you the web interface for getting into Korbyt. It's entirely 100% web-based, so I can access this resource from my phone, can access it from my desktop computer. I can get access to it anywhere in the world. And I know the last year of when we had 4Winds, we had a web interface, but it was very restrictive in what you could do with your players and what you could do in terms of editing your signs, unless you had a client installed on your computer. So there are a tremendous amount of resources that are going to be available to you, a lot of extra features and functionality that we think that you're going to enjoy. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the time to remind you again, post your questions to chat. We'll have people that are out there. I'm going to stop sharing my screen. I'm going to transition this over to Ed. I'm going to let him do a quick introduction, and then he's going to kick off a bigger portion of all of the training that we have here. So Ed, I'm going to stop sharing my screen and let you begin that process and get us kicked off.
Sounds good. Thank you, Joshua. So welcome, everyone. As Joshua mentioned, my name's Ed Kinney. I'm the product training manager from Korbyt. So I'm here really to dive into like how the Korbyt system is going to work for you. So there's a lot of intricacies and internal questions I'm sure you're going to have. Please use the chat. Please ask them. That way they can at least be captured, even if they're not necessarily going to be answered by myself. So I want to start by talking about your Korbyt tenant and what exactly a Korbyt tenant is. It's that web interface that allows you to manage and control your signage. Korbyt is a cloud-based content management system, so you're going to use it through your web browsers. So it's actually compatible with any computer operating system. We do have a request in there, though, with it being web-based using your browser. We have to ask that you use either a Chrome or Edge web browser for full functionality. Joshua mentioned, using it mobilely. Some functions will work mobilely. I'll let you know. Some might not. It is definitely designed for a full desktop, laptop browser experience, not necessarily a mobile experience. But there are some functions you can do through a mobile device. So your user IDs in Korbyt are going to be based on an email address. We support single sign-on integrations, but Korbyt will still know you by your email address. That's what controls your identity. And as Joshua kind of mentioned, there's not an individual licensing component here. So if this kind of opens up who should be communicators through your departments, through your groups, cost is not a control or limit in that. You can have more people in your Korbyt system. When you log into the Korbyt system, you'll be looking at a dashboard. And I'm going to actually pivot now to your dashboard. So this is the TCU Korbyt Tenant. I am currently viewing it as a content approver, which is the role that I believe most of you will have in the system. Your role in Korbyt decides what you can and can't do. So if you do feel that you are limited in what you need to do to achieve your communication goals, talk to your IT department about what you need to be able to do. It might be a case that your role is not quite fine-tuned enough in the system. Today, we're going to be looking at what content approvers can and can't do in the system, how you use the interface to control what is being seen on your screens. So looking at the dashboard here, I'm going to zoom my web browser in a little bit. Navigating the system is all done with these icons across the top. The first one, the one you're going to use all the time, is the 3 horizontal lines in the top left corner. Sometimes gets called a hamburger icon. We call it the mega menu because that actually opens up all of the sections of your signage solution. There's device management. This is where your players and player groups that you have access to can be found. There is a schedule section. This is where you actually create playlists. Playlists are the mechanism that controls what gets seen, where, when, and for how long. So when it comes time to actually change what's being seen on your screens, you actually don't go to the player device management section. You go to the playlist section, and you create a playlist of items that are going to be sent out to specific players. And then the content section, the other section you're going to be using routinely. This is where you upload items that you already have. So if you have pictures or documents that you want to make seen, this is where you upload them, the content section. It also has tools for creation of new signage. So pulling in elements like tickers or real-time date and time and other data elements. They are built together in what we call layouts. Those are constructed pieces of signage. There's also sections for reports and analytics. So there's things like audit trails to see who's done what, who's made what changes. And then when we get into the advanced section, that's where things like kiosk builder reside. So any like building interactive touch screens in Korbyt. A little outside of our topics today, but I wanted to point out that that's where those live. So that's the mega menu. That's where you're going to operate most of the time. As Joshua mentioned, there's your great website, that korbyt.tcu.com has a lot of resources. We also have a link here connected to one of our resources that some of your links go to, and that's our knowledge base. So this is the Korbyt knowledge base, kb.korbyt.com. It's where a few of the things on your website take you to. And here you can find things like getting started guides for digital signage. You can browse into digital signage articles, or you can search for keywords. So if, creating clever playlists, you can find articles about how to manage a clever playlist. And they take you through a lot of what you need. So resources out there for you. And that again was through this question mark. The user ID in the upper right-hand corner, if you're a content approver or a content author, that's where you can manage your own profile or log out of the system. There's a notifications section. If you are a content approver and you have content authors that work under you and they have to request approval for things to be published, those requests show up here in the system. Otherwise, it won't come in to use much for you. And then global actions. This is where you can quickly go to a section of Korbyt. It's kind of like a fast track or a quick action menu. The icon there, Korbyt Anywhere, also takes you back to your dashboard. So that's how you can navigate in the system. So what I want to do now, besides just general navigation, is take you through basically the flow of content in the system. So how things get seen. So the players, we'll start there. The players, this represents the media devices that are connected to your screens that are receiving the content from Korbyt being told what to show. When you go here, you'll be able to see the players that you've been allowed to see, not necessarily all TCU players. There's a couple views of this screen. You can see things in a list type view. You can also see them in a card type view. As content approvers, your ability to interact with players is pretty limited in terms of direct player management. So you're not going to be having the players reboot or clear their cache or changing information about what software version they're running or things like that. So, but you can still see the statistics on the players. Players' main statistic is their status. This represents their ability to communicate with Korbyt. with the cloud, with the system. If a player is active, that means it is connected and communicating. It is in good communication status, and it's receiving updates on what it should and shouldn't be showing. The other status besides active, and I'm sorry to say I don't have one here in my view at the moment for you to see, is inactive. Inactive is a player that has been connected, been active in the past, but something has stopped it from communicating with Korbyt. What has stopped it? We don't know by looking at the website here. We just know that it has stopped communicating with the service. Could be it's been powered off, unplugged, and put in a closet someplace because it was misbehaving and you're reaching out to your IT group. Could be that someone unplugged the Ethernet cable because they thought they needed it more than the media player. Whatever the case may be, all we know is the player is not talking to the service. That's what inactive means. It means it's not getting updates on what it should and shouldn't show. A player, when it goes inactive, if the player's still powered on and connected to the screen, it's going to keep displaying whatever it was most recently told to show. So it doesn't go like to a blank screen. It doesn't go to a screen that says like connection interrupted or anything like that, because it's not a streaming service. The players receive their content, download it, store it, and then play it with the instructions that came along with the content. You do have the ability to preview the players. It's a little eyeball. I'll let you know that is not a live view of the players, just so we're clear. It's a preview. It starts playing the playlist and content that's been sent to the player in a new web browser tab for you. It's not a live view of the players. Just so we're clear. So you have the ability to see statistics on the players. The other player that you see here, in my view at the moment, is pending. That's not a status you're going to see often. Pending is a transitory status. It means that the Korbyt tenant has been told to connect to this player. And that connection hasn't happened yet. It might be, a player that's still migrating over, hasn't been fully migrated to your Korbyt tenant yet. Once a player has connected, it will either be active or inactive. So pending, you should not see terribly often. So these are the players being able to see what's going on with the media devices. How does a player know what it should or shouldn't be showing? That's the function of playlists. So mega menu, scheduling, playlist section. Playlists group together content and tell it when and where it should show up on the screens. There's two types of playlists in the Korbyt system. There's clever and not clever. So you'll see most of the playlists in your system are the clever style playlists. When you create a playlist is when you get to make that decision. When you click add playlist, you get two choices: add playlist or add a clever playlist. You're probably wondering what the difference is. Well, a clever playlist allows for a lot more automation and control of the content. The first option, add a playlist, is a simple playlist. It gets the job done. You can pick a few, you can pick multiple media items. You can send them to a player. But with a clever playlist, you can pick individual items. You can also create rules that pull content for you based on its tag or based on the folder where it's saved in Korbyt. So you can create automation that makes your job easier. You can also add controls in that automation. So for example, if I pick items from just this fall courses display lobby edit folder, but that has lobby in the name. So if this was content that should only be seen in a lobby, I can also give this item instructions to only show if the player information for its room is that it is in a lobby. Got to spell lobby right, though. So this is information that your players know about themselves. There's different characteristics about the players. It's called metadata that you'll be able to leverage to control when content gets seen. You can use player metadata. You can also use things like date or time. So maybe this content from the course display, I only want to show Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. So I can create that rule. This playlist could then be sent to multiple players, but this selection of content would only actually play on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. We'll come back to clever playlists in a moment. I just wanted to touch on the idea that they're what controls content going out to your screens. Where does the content come from? Well, here in the content section, the most basic type of content are items that you've uploaded to the media manager. This is your storage point in Korbyt for anything that exists outside of Korbyt now that you want to bring into Korbyt. Pictures, videos, documents, anything like that. You might be wondering, what type of format does Korbyt support? Well, if we actually hover over this import media button, there's a link here to a knowledge base article that tells you exactly what media specifications we support and some of the things to think about with your media specifications, such as the max bit rate for video files, or how PowerPoints and PDFs are PowerPoints and PDFs are handled in the system. So I want to import some some items here just so you can see how the process works. I want to do it into a space that, I can know it's my example items. So I'm just going to create a new folder, call it Korbyt Training Examples. Oh, someone's hidden the folder from me in my approver role, but it's already in the system. So I will come up with another name. Korbyt End User Training. That works. So I have my folder here. I select my folder in the navigation window for the folders. That's the first step for importing items to the right place. So I have my folder selected, and I'm going to import media. Just click the import media button. And now I can browse my computer, grab pictures. I can also drag and drop items. So here's a PowerPoint of training content dropped into the mix. Go back in, grab a video file. So I can import multiple items at once from multiple different spots. In this import process, I can also assign tags to my content. So this can define it for automation or just help with organization. So I'm going to tag this as Korbyt Training Examples. So now that piece of information is going to be tied to these documents. You can see the video file that I tried to upload here is telling me that its bit rate is too high. If you see this error associated with videos, it means that the complexity is too high to be played back well in the system. You would want to use video tools to lower that bit rate. If you have them already on hand, things like Adobe Premiere or any other video encoding software, you can use what you know. If you need our tool, it would be most likely contacting your IT actually to have them send you our CURT convert software if you needed that. So that video not going to play in the system. Just to make sure we have a video, going to go ahead and grab one that's already been transcoded to a bit rate that will play. I'm going to go ahead and hit done. And we'll see that the items are now here in Korbyt, my video files, my pictures. Now, this video file, the one with that's too high a bit rate, I don't need that file. Don't need it anymore. When it comes time that you don't need items anymore, you can always delete them out of Korbyt. If you're a content approver, you have the ability to use the trash can to delete items. It does warn you, are you sure you want to delete this item? Yes, because once it's deleted, it's gone. There's no trash can. There's no recovering it. If you delete items out of Korbyt, the only way to get it back into Korbyt would be to re-import it from whatever the source was. So I've got these items I imported from my computer. We also have links to Pixabay built into the Media Manager. So if you need stock photos to put into something you're creating, there is a direct link to Pixabay for royalty-free, license-free images that will create copies of those items you choose in your Media Manager. In the Media Manager here, you'll see my videos, my pictures, my documents, folders. You interact with all these using the action icons on the right. Different items allow different types of actions. A fairly universal action is the pencil. That lets you edit the details about an item. If it's a folder, it lets me change the name. If it's an image, it actually lets you not only change the name of the image, the title of the item, lets you also edit the tags that are attached, and lets you add validity date information. This can be a powerful tool in Korbyt to control time-sensitive items. This controls when a playlist will show something or not. So if this, instead of being a picture of, fun dogs at an office, was something I didn't want seen until a specific date and time, I can set that to the image. So I can say this shouldn't be seen before September 13th at noon. That's local time for the players, noon. Can have a start date. I could also, if I needed to, add an end date. So I don't want it seen after September 30th at midnight. If I wanted to, I could also just add an end date. These are not, you don't need both. You can have one, the other, or both. But with that information attached, I could add this to a playlist now, send that playlist to every player on your campus. It won't be seen. Now, if I didn't take any action, it would start being seen September 13th. Now, I'm not going to actually do that, but just to give you an idea of the strength of that validity date control, it's tied to the item. Speaking of items and how they react in the system, you may have noticed there's a folder here that I didn't actually create manually in the system. This is how Korbyt treats PowerPoints and PDFs. Because the playlist system doesn't accept PowerPoints or PDFs directly, one of the things the Media Manager will do when you import one of those is it will create a new folder. And in that folder, you will find image files of each slide or page from the original document. So it's going to create a series of images for you based on the PDF or the PowerPoint.
Oh, man.
So that is how it will handle PowerPoints and PDFs. Now, if all I needed was the actual images, I can go ahead and then delete the document if I want to, if I don't need it. It holds on to both because there's other ways that you could use the document within Korbyt, just not sending it directly to a playlist. With images, there's some other things you can do with items. You can use the crop or rotate or simple edit tool. So you can select part of the image. You can do things like flipping the photo. You can even give it a aspect ratio to lock the selection tool down to. So for example, if I want to crop down this image to be 16 by 9, so it would be, full screen on a regular TV, because it is not a 16 by 9 image, I can tell it to lock my selection to 16 by 9. If you use things like the crop tool or the color filter tool on images, it's going to create new copies of the item. The thing to be aware of with those new copies, they do not have validity date or tag information that the original had. So if you are using tags or validity dates on an item and you use those crop or color filter tools, you'll just have to manually reapply those tags or that validity date information. Videos don't have any editing tools in the system. They just have informational tools, tell you all the different aspects of the video, and give you information about transcode instructions if it is too high a bit rate. Videos, though, behind that pencil, still have the same ability to edit tags, edit titles, and validity dates that images had. So this is the media manager. I've seen a bunch of questions coming in to the chat. Joshua's been answering them primarily, which is fantastic. Want to pause here, though, and ask if there are other questions. If anyone wants to come off mute or ask any questions about the media manager, where your items are being stored if you're importing them.
Hey, Ed, I will point out one question that I pointed Art to. He was asking about managing the time that an item stays up or that a media item stays up. And I told him to wait till you cover playlists because that's where you can do that from there.
Exactly. Yep. Playlists are the mechanism that controls items being seen. That's kind of the question I was hoping for. Like, okay, so it's here, like, where's it getting seen? Nowhere. If a playlist isn't taking it and telling it to be seen someplace. This is just storage at this point. And
I'm sorry, Ed.
Yeah.
You mentioned that you can take one of those image files that are located here, and set it to begin showing at a certain time. But can you add it to a playlist and have it end at a certain time? Like if we have an event and we want to start promoting that event, but then I don't have to worry about, oh, I got to go take that slide down because now that event is passed.
Yes, that is
Okay.
the beauty of validity dates here. You've
Okay.
got both start and end date spots, and you don't have to use both.
I don't have to use both.
Yep.
Okay, that's
but you can
great.
like if something like, hey, I want it to start being seen right now, doesn't need a start date. It's valid now. But that, like you said, that event, it happens the 29th at, not in the AM most likely, at 4 p.m. So after the event starts, I don't need this to be seen on any screens. So I can tie this piece of information to the media item. Same with start date. So like, we're still working out some of the details. We can't announce it, but we should be able to announce it on Saturday. So it should be able to start being seen Saturday at noon. Okay. Well, I'm not going to get into the system on Saturday at noon. So I'm going to tell the item, you should start being valid to be seen Saturday the 2nd at noon. The event's the 29th at 4 o'clock. Stop showing then. These validity dates, though, don't tell it what screen it should go to, how long it should be seen on that screen. This is like a very high level control tied to the item. so that you, like, no matter who draws it into a playlist or tells it where to show up, it knows these details about itself.
Thank you.
Yep. No, it's a great question. And that's the exact use case of those validity dates. Start and stop it without the need for manual intervention at that minute.
And Ed, we have another question about, is there a deleted items folder or trash for the media manager?
Once it's deleted, it's gone forever from Korbyt. So if you want to bring it back, you'd have to import it back from wherever the source was. Yep. There's no recycling bin, no trash bin anywhere in Korbyt. So gone is gone.
Really need to.
Yep. Or it's be very cautious with the delete, because it removes it from everywhere within Korbyt as well. So if someone has created a layout using that item, if you delete it, it gets removed from their layout, because the layout is calling in the image file from the media manager where it's stored. So be cautious with that deletion. So nothing here is being seen yet. So if I want it to be seen, that's where we go back to playlists. Playlists are the mechanism that makes content seen. So it doesn't mean that you always have to create a new playlist every time. There could already be a predefined playlist that you just need to add your items to. Now, I know that in a lot of your cases, clever playlists are already being constructed to be played in your location. So it might be the case of finding something like the pre-health office clever playlist. That might be the playlist that's controlling content being seen on your screens, in which case you don't have to create a whole new playlist every time. You're just editing the one that exists. As content approvers, if you can see a playlist in the system, you have some actions that you can take on it. The pencil would open up the playlist so that you can edit it. The little I, the lowercase letter I, opens up the information about the playlist, like its title and its description. The eyeball previews the playlist. And the little clone tool copies it. So I'm actually going to go into a playlist I created before in our other trainings, this training playlist Clever 2. So instead of creating a whole new one, I'm going to go in to edit one that already exists. So we can see items that are on this playlist. You can move them around on the playlist. This changes the order in which they get referenced and played. You can see here, it tells you what type of item it is. Whether it's a clever rule, a layout, a video. Go ahead and add an image file. Dogs in the office. So I'll add an image file into the mix and see what that looks like. So you have multiple items already here. If you're managing a playlist that already exists, it's important to be able to see what's going on in those ways. The items that are called clever, those are the rules that are deciding what to show based on the instructions that you've written out. If you need to change those instructions, you click the lightning bolt. That reopens the instructions. So for example, I can see that this item here was written, just called folders, but the actual instruction was to pull items from a folder that I no longer have access to in this current approver role, but to only show things on Saturdays and Sundays between 2 a.m. and 4 a.m. So just because it shows up on the playlist here, and just because the playlist is set to play all day, every day, does not necessarily mean every item on the playlist has to be set that way. Let's add some more items. I'm going to click this plus button here, and I can bring in video files into the system. I can bring in layouts. We'll talk more about layouts in a moment. URLs, images. So again, this is bringing in just individual items. Let me scroll in here. If it is an individual item, you get the ability to change its time that it spends on the screen as a single item. So my dog in the office picture, I love that picture. I want it up for a whole minute. So I'm going to give it 60 seconds. So when this comes up on the playlist, it will be on the screen for 60 seconds. This image, let's give it, well, there's a lot of text on that image. Let's give that 45 seconds. This layout, and give it 42 seconds because I'm in a Douglas Adams sort of mood. You'll notice that videos don't let me edit the time. That's because the default is for videos to play full length. You'll also know notice the creative rules don't give me the ability to change the amount of time. That's because it's part of the rule that decides how long each item in the rule gets to be seen. And that was the question I see Art asked. If I have multiple items, how do I change each graphic? So let's create another rule. I want to add a rule into this playlist. I'm going to use the rocket to do it. I'm going to call this training slides. I have that folder of PowerPoint slides that were created. So I'm going to say tag, instead of tags, I want folder. So if the folder content, now I need to find my folder. There it is. So that's the folder that has all those images. I want that to be in the playlist. I want it, if it's in that folder, to show for, let's give each slide 21 seconds. I want to play all of the items. Crossfade between each item. I can even add more components to these options. If I click this plus button, I can do things like say, I want the order to be named A to Z. And I can say I want the content type to only be images. So if there were other things added into that folder, I don't want this rule to look at it. And I can click add. And now there's all of those slide images. Art, I see you asking, what if I want one slide to show for 5 seconds and others to show for 10? They would have to be added to the playlist in different ways then. You would have to add, maybe the first item is added, it's outside of the folder, and you give it the 5 seconds. And then the series of items coming in from the rule get 10 seconds. Within a clever rule, they're all going to get the same amount of time. It's a very good question. So that clever rule pulls those items in. I can edit that rule if I need to. I can click the lightning bolt here. Maybe this was the old folder. I've got new items. I uploaded a whole new PowerPoint and I want it to pull in different images. I would just change the folder that it looks at by editing the rule. I want to stick with my platform overview though one. And again, I can go into the options of when by clicking this content button. This gives me when controls. So I can have it be based on data subscriptions, metadata for the players. This is one of the more common ones. So the statistics about the player. Date and time are also common criteria to put here. So I can say, these training slides, I only want them to show between the dates of September 1st, September 30th, and when the day of week is Monday, and the time of day is between noon and 2:30. So you can get very detailed. Don't have to be very detailed, but you can be very detailed with the instructions that just even one item in the playlist has. Now, the difference between the media manager validity dates and this type of programming is that type of programming, creating a clever rule that says this folder, these items should play on these days, given these characteristics, is part of this playlist. So it only appears here when you actually make it part of the playlist. If someone else grabbed these items, put them into another playlist, it would follow whatever rules that playlist had. Whereas validity dates are actually tied to the item. This is the item that we added validity dates to a few minutes ago. You can see it has this hourglass icon. This is telling me that this item isn't valid yet. That's what the yellow hourglass is telling me. Hasn't started yet. So it's here on the playlist, but it's not going to play yet. And that's tied to the item. If it was playing but had an end date attached, it would be green. And if it's past its validity date, it goes red. And you can even see in this rule, the little thumbnails of my examples, this one's gone red, meaning it's here, it's being pulled in, but it's not being seen. Playlists can have detailed schedules as well. The players can receive multiple playlists. So you could have, if you wanted to, have multiple playlists that play on different days. You can get into the detail advanced schedule to say this entire playlist should only play during the week, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, or between certain date ranges or in certain times. Players, the media players that you're not actually directly managing, they can receive multiple playlists. They will play them in rotation. So a player will just play multiple playlists happily in rotation. Art, I see you raised your hand. Don't know if you've gotten all the questions into the chat or if you wanted to come off mute. Good to go? Okay. So playlists, they pull items together. They give them the amount of time they should be seen on the screen. They can have complex rules. If the playlist is meant to go out directly to a player, you would assign it to players here. This is what decides like what is full screen on the player. So you have player groups, individual players, and you can select the players to be assigned to. So if you open up a playlist and it has actual players here, that means this playlist is being sent to those media players. It would be playing this full screen, this series of items full screen. It would go down the playlist to the end. If these players were receiving other playlists as well, it would play those other playlists, come back to this playlist. I do not actually want to send this to any of your players, so I'm going to remove them there. and I'm going to hit save playlist. I want you to be aware that because this is not a streaming relationship, I just made changes to this playlist. If it's being seen anywhere, it may be up to 15 minutes before the things I just changed actually start being seen on the screens. And that's because the players check in for changes like that every 15 minutes. That's why it could be up to 15 minutes. If I was changing the content being seen on the second floor political science output 1, it would actually update in 14 minutes because that's when this player is going to do its next check-in. What questions can I answer for you about playlists? Got one more thing to talk about in our training today, and it's another way that playlists get referenced. But before we talk about that, what questions can I answer for you about playlists themselves?
I have a question about sharing assets. In the central marketing communications, we occasionally have institutional messages that we would like for others to put on their displays. Share.
So as far as Korbyt's concerned, yes, because it's if I can see it in the media manager, I can use it. What will likely need to be set up is a space where you can put those items that all those other users can see. Because I know there's controls to stop everyone from seeing all content. So there'd need to be a folder where you can put those items that people can make general use of. There's other mechanisms that can also be put in place to basically make your content already part of their displays without necessarily them making those choices, depending on how the playlists are managed. So for example, the playlist functionality, there can be like, yes, this is for the political science area, but there's a pull in from the like all screen signage content. Doesn't have to be hyper local.
Got it. Thank you.
And Bill, you feel free to reach out to me directly and we can work with the systems team to give y'all a folder space that everyone has access to that allows y'all to upload content and send directly out to those. And then I can give you access to the user's DL so y'all can send out a message to those team members and let them know, hey, we've added new content. You're welcome to use it.
Great. Thank you. Sounds good.
Yep. I saw a question in the chat as well. There is no set length for videos. It's the bit rate and the complexity, but we don't have a length or a size limit. That being said, if you tried to, play Avengers on it, it's going to, really bog down the player because it doesn't have that much storage to cache it. And there's, of course, a whole bunch of copyright and royalty concerns. But there's no set size limit. Another question there. Display immediately. Take up to 15 minutes to update or display. What was it? Display immediately. Not certain what you heard that would, be displaying immediately. It's, the playlists just simply take 50. It's not so much the playlist. The players check in every 15 minutes. So it's wherever they are in their 15-minute check-in cycle that's going to decide what's actually seen on your screens. Kurt, good question. If your player is pending, you're going to want to talk to your IT group to troubleshoot, why your player hasn't connected fully to Korbyt. Some good questions there. Now, the last thing I want to talk about with playlists, and it's because playlists don't only go directly out to screens. We saw when I previewed the political science player here that there's a collection of items here on the screen. You've got the time, the weather. Don't be shocked that the time is off. This is my time because it is my computer right now that is playing the content in my preview window. And you have these series of images playing in the center, but we have things like the weather, the TCU logo, the group, all of these being fixed. That is because the area in the center here that has a series of items playing is a playlist. And instead of the playlist just being sent out to the player, it's actually being used within a layout. So layouts like this one, the poli-sci using clever playlist. This layout, I'm going to use the pencil here to open up the layout editor. This pulls together weather information that's being fed into the signage system, the current time as played by the player, other weather information, and then the political science clever playlist folder. That is the playlist that is playing in this area. So if I want to change what's being seen on the screens for the political science, screens receiving this layout, I would just change the items that are in the playlist, political science clever playlist folder. That would control what plays inside of this area of the screen. Let me see if I have access to that playlist. Yep, political science template using clever playlist folder. That's the final one. There we are, political science clever playlist folder. So if I click my pencil on this playlist, you can see it has one item. It's a clever rule. It's pulling in items from the folder, TCU, AdRan, political science clever playlist, just looking at those items. You'll notice it's not being sent to any player. It's just a playlist. It's being referenced by that layout. That layout is being sent out to the player, pulling together all of those pieces of content. So that's how playlists can actually already be nested inside of a design. It's not just these items go full screen. Question there, can layouts be alternated with other images, videos, etc.? Yes. So, for example, this political science template using clever playlist that is going out to the actual screen, you can see that the layout, which has all of those embedded items, has the screen for 600 seconds at a time. If I were to add another item to this layout, it would play after this. It would play in full screen. It would replace the layout that has the embedded playlist. You want to be careful using it this way, though, because I will say, while 600 seconds sounds like a long time, the challenge is, even if nothing else gets added here, every 600 seconds, this layout will let go of the screen and then take control of the screen again. That will restart the playlist that is embedded in. So if there's more than 600 seconds worth of content on the playlist that's playing there, it won't get seen. It won't make it all the way through it. So it can be sometimes challenging to make sure items play all the way through. There's settings that can help control that. Let's actually take a look at that layout. See if this was told. Yep, there's a play all button. I'm going to go ahead and actually turn that on. What that does is it makes this design stay on the screen however long it takes for everything in this playlist to play all the way through at least once. I'll go ahead and publish that change. My guess was that was the intent by giving it that much time anyway. I will say that does get affected by the player software and the player runtime environment. It's a newer feature, so everything kind of has to be up to date for it to work. The other thing you might see in playlists that you go into, the more common way to ensure that a layout always has the screen that has a long playlist that should be playing through embedded. The most common way you will see that done in Korbyt to make sure it always works is to set that item to 0 seconds. 0 seconds, little counterintuitive. If you see a 0 second item, what that means is happening is once it starts playing, it plays forever until something kind of stops it, like the playlist not being active anymore, things like that. So it's, some people think, well, I put 0, it shouldn't be seen. It actually does the opposite. It says it never expires. So it is a very hard control in the system, meaning that if you add more items now, they won't be seen. It won't rotate to them. So that's why this was set at 600 seconds. So that's how a playlist can be embedded into a layout, but then ultimately there is some point where something gets sent to the player to make it show up. It can be this final layout. It could be the original layout if you don't have a design like this. What questions can I answer for you about embedding a playlist into a layout, or just the time that an embedded playlist might need?
Hey, Ed, I will add in that if you were interested in learning more about managing a layout and being able to make changes and build out a layout, we've already got content on our website, on that Korbyt website. There's training there for those pieces, because that wasn't intended for today, but that is definitely exposing you a little bit to what's there.
Yep. And important to understand how it's pulling all together in the final form. But yes, there's a lot of things that can be added into a layout. It's about as complex as using like an Adobe Suite tool. But like Joshua said, the content and publishing 2 training class that's in your website, the Korbyt.tcu.edu site. It's content and publishing 2 is the training class that goes like full in on the layout builder tool, if you want to know more. What questions can we answer for you today? I know we're coming up towards the end of our scheduled time. What questions do you have?
I'll answer that one for you, Ed. So the question from Kurt was, do I need to make a request to add a staff member as content manager? Yes. So in the past with 4 Winds, we had to restrict that down to very few individuals, but with Korbyt, the great advantage is we can add as many people as you need now, because it's based off of players instead of individuals that can edit. So all you need to do is put in a request. You can just put in a self-service ticket. It's under video, signage, and surveillance, and there's an option for Korbyt. You can put in who you need to have access, and we can get them added to the signage distribution list, as well as access to your players. We'll just need to be able to tell us which players you need them to have access to. That will be the core item to plan on.
Yep. I'll also throw in there that if you want people to be able to handle content, but you're looking at the playlist things and you're like, I really don't want people to have to manage playlists, but I have people that I don't want everybody to email me. I just want them to be able to add things. There's a level of access in Korbyt called content author that would give individuals to folders that you want them to have access to the ability to add items in to a folder. So if you've already built the automation that says, you know, the items in this folder should be seen, your content authors can just go to that folder, import an item, and by it being imported into that folder, the automation's already been built. It'll go out to the playlist where you want it to be seen. You don't have to get into the playlist portion of it if the playlist automation's already been built.
And one thing to add to that as well, Ed, there's still a lot of security pieces we're working out. In most cases, you should only be exposed to the things that you're supposed to have access to, like your players and your clever playlists. If there's a situation where you've got access to more than that, we can always investigate, but we're still working out and tweaking a couple of things to adjust for that as well. I think there was some adjustments made even last week as we were preparing for this that got some things lined up that we were expecting. All right, I don't see any new questions. Ed, is there anything else that you want to make sure that you impart to this team before we end our session today?
The only thing I want to point out, as you are building, if you go into a playlist to do edits, you may have seen me like just use like my browser back button a few times or just close a window. Because it is web-based, if you go in and you make a change to something, but you don't actually confirm that change by either like saving the playlist, or if we're talking about layouts, this can be a big benefit when it comes to layouts. I see a lot of people editing layouts. If you go in to edit a layout and you do something and it's like, oops a daisy, I just made a change. I don't know how to fix what I just did. As long as you don't hit the save button, you can always use your browser back button to just abandon whatever you've done. So it can be a weakness or a great strength of the system that because it's web-based, if you navigate away from a page before saving your changes, those changes get lost. So just it becomes part of your habits.
Awesome suggestion. Thank you so much, Ed. I do want to thank everybody for coming today. We really appreciate your time. I will take this recorded video and get it posted to the Korbyt website. So if you need to add people or you need to review this in the future, we will be happy to get that out for you. If you have questions, we will have some embedded support team members that will be able to point you in the right direction. Just remember that you are the owner of your content. We won't build out a brand new template for you, but we're going to show you how to start that process and put you down the right path to being able to get what you need. You have a lot of control and a lot of capability with this tool to be able to make the changes that you need. And don't hesitate to get in and play around, because as long as you're not deleting things, we can still get back in and help you readjust where things are. And as Ed pointed out, sometimes you just want to get in and play a little and you may not hit the save button. So thank you very much, everyone, for attending. Ed, thank you for the training. We appreciate it. I'll get this out to the website later, and I will also email the digital signage users group, which includes all of you, with that information as well. So have a fantastic rest of the week. Hopefully this was great and kind of got you ready to get into some of your players. And as I had mentioned in the past, if you're having a problem with an existing player, please put in a request. We'll get an embedded support team member involved in talking to you about what's going on. Your player may just be offline. There might have been some issues with the power outages we had this summer. So there are definitely things we can help you work through when we get into that situation. But otherwise, have a wonderful day, and thank you all so much for attending.
Thanks.